So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, namaste, and a very warm welcome to all of you to the World Teen Parliament podcasts. These are a series of podcasts where we talk to world leaders, take their opinions on how do they think the world is forming up, or how does the future look like for teenagers at the World Teen Parliament, where we give all the power to teenagers to decide how they devise, design, and give the vision to the world. Let's see what the world leaders have to say to teenagers. Today, for this session, we are very thankful that we have amongst us Mr. Luyolo Mphithi, the Member of Parliament from South Africa. He is a celebrated MP. He is one of the youngest MPs in South Africa. He comes from a background where he has been academically amazing, and then he has took a lot of effort to be where he is today. He's somebody who has from reading books and being amazing at that, still being somebody who had Mandela Rhodes Fellowship. He also had Yali Fellowship, and who worked his way through, took the effort, and now has a seat at the power table. So today, a very warm welcome to you, sir. How would you like to start this conversation? What's your opening thought for this before we get into the questions?
Well, thank you so much for having me, and it's so incredible. I think I said this the last time, but it's such an honor to speak to young people, and I think I'm so excited for this conversation. I think my opening words would really be the importance of being a citizen and a servant to your community. And I think my journey in politics has really been about understanding the community that I'm in, understanding the issues and the problems that my community has, and being able to advocate for that. And, in advocating for the challenges that my community has, no water, no roads, no toilets, was the ability to understand the plight of the people in my community and be able to use the mediums that I had to raise the plight of the people that were in my community. And so I think it's so important to be able to get into a space, whether political or not, whether civil society or not, whether corporate or not, to be able to remember the challenges that many of the people in your community are going through. And so I think that was very important to me. Getting into politics was understanding my why, because when you know why you do something, you can never be lost. And so I told this story, but I think it's such an important one. Why I got into politics is because of dignity. And just a brief background about myself. I grew up in South Africa. We have something called a back room, which is a room that is behind the main house. And usually in that back room, you have the domestic worker or the helper, the person who cleans the main house for the main family. And I grew up in that room, living with my mom, my grandmother, my uncle, and my other aunt. So just imagine 5 people living in one room. And so that reality was something that I lived with and grappled with, and wanted to understand, but why is it this way? And so the politics of space was something that was very important to me, which was to get into politics because space was important, dignity was important. And so with those brief words, just to share a bit of myself, as I've been introduced, I'm a member of parliament for the Democratic Alliance, which is a party in South Africa. I was elected into parliament at the age of 27, and it's been a crazy journey, one that has been exciting, but one that has been about empowering the community, empowering the people that I saw struggling. As a kid, it was extremely difficult to be, one of the experiences that I had that stays with me, to be chased home by other kids laughing at where I stayed because they were all like, he lives in a back room, and when you're young, those things, they become important. Do you have an iPhone? So that is something that stays with me because I never wanted another child to experience that. And so My fight in Parliament is for young people, kids, children, teenagers to have a life that is of dignity, a life where they don't have to experience what I experienced. And so the small change that I can make is a big change in someone's life. And with that, I'll hand back over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Loyolo, for taking out the time for this. It's so amazing to listen to a story when, there is a lot of personal context to it. You added something that clearly defines a mechanism that the world defines as apartheid. And you took that whole concept into a simple idea of a back room. How does that back room really, translate into real life is something that most of the privileged people across the globe cannot ever imagine or have an understanding around. It's very difficult when you go into a school and you don't have the liberty to define your own identity because your identity comes with you from home. And the worst part is if you hate that own identity, it becomes a continuous struggle between you and that identity because you try to be away from that as much as you can, but you cannot be. People keep reminding what you said, the kind of stigma it builds because teens chasing you off school, or this is something that makes all of these concepts real. Because for a teenager now in the current world, the world looks very different. They are in a stage where when they get privilege, people start thinking that yes, that's the base level of humanity, that's where everyone is, and we are starting from this point, which is not the case.
Mm.
So the future generation needs that realization. So let's now start with the questions. You are someone who is currently one of the most decorated young leaders, since you were a part of the Mandela Rhodes and the Yali Foundation. From high school you have been academically strong. And, for a teenager who might be listening to you right now or might listen to this podcast in the future, what is that one single non negotiable step that you took that bridged the gap between idealism and having a real seat at the power table? Because a lot of teens think that, this is the idealistic way I would want the world. This is what I would want to change in the world. But the problem is the idealism does not translate into policy. There's a big journey between it. So, what's that one step that you think every teenager must do in their life, whether they want to be in politics or not, but something that they must experience to understand this transition or this journey?
Yeah, look, I think it will be different for every young person. But for me, I think one of the biggest drivers that I had, particularly being in we say we have primary school and high school. I'm not sure what it's called that side, but um, the one thing that was a big driver for me was I knew that I couldn't fail, right? And I know for, you don't want to say that to young people because it's okay to fail because that's how you learn, right? But for me, when I got back from school and walking into this back room and having to see the lack of dignity in that room with my family, you know, sleeping on the floor and having to realize that this is the reality that I have. I had to understand that I have to make it work. I have to push at school. I have to study hard. I have to change that reality because if I didn't, who was going to do it? So it was very important for me looking at my grandmother, looking at my mother, and seeing what and how they were living to then say to myself, I have to make it work. I have to work hard at school. I have to study hard. I have to work harder than other kids because when you live in poverty, there's something that changes in you deep inside. And so I knew that I couldn't fail. And I knew that I had to have a drive to improve their lives and for their lives to be better. So school was fundamentally important because in South Africa, um, education is the key to success, right? So I've seen so many young people work hard at school, being able to build a house for their family, being able to um, buy their mom a car, things that are so important, you know. So I knew that, and that was the biggest driver for me. And I think we all don't have the same reality. You can be from a rich family, a poor family, but the the thing is the same. If you are focused and you know your why and you know why you're doing what you're doing and you understand the impact that you want to make, whether you're from a poor background or a rich background, the reason is the same because the heart is why you get into something to change people's lives, you know? So I think even where I'm at now, I understand that I'm more privileged than some other people, right? Because I've been able to work hard and but there's still people that don't have um the amenities that I have. So that's why I can't give up because they need to have the same. And we need to live in a world where there's justice, where it's just, where all people have the ability and the opportunity to live the life that they want. And so I think as young people, for me, that was the biggest thing that drove me. And, you know, I'm happy today that my grandmother lives in a house and she's able to walk from the kitchen to the bedroom to the bathroom and she has dignity. And that is the drive that I had because I wanted her to have dignity. And so it's personal, but if she can have that, why can't other people have that? And that's why I fight. I fight for other people's mothers, grandmothers, that they have the same, that dignity. So that's what I can say.
So your story starts with that personal problem that you faced and that personal solution that you wanted to build. You also said that you could see that in your school itself, the people who were making money, who were academically strong, who were amazing at school, were able to make their own houses, they're able to afford cars, they were able to afford a luxury life. When was that exact moment when you realized that I have to do this for myself as a person, but I have to do it for the society as well? What is it that transitioned it from a personal problem to a public problem that you went into solving that gave you power to be at that table? So, what was there an instant around it? Is there a story around it, or what? How did it really evolve from a personal issue to a public issue?
You know, even though I share the story, one might maybe think that, you know, that's the worst that it can be. And it's actually not. There's worse stories of other families. And I think the one thing that really hit me, particularly from where I come from, which is the Eastern Cape. In South Africa, um, a toilet is a luxury, right? Especially if you're coming from a rural area. And so there was this one situation that happened in my community where if you don't have a toilet, you have a pit latrine. I'm not sure if you guys know pit latrine as young people, but a pit latrine is a makeshift toilet, and essentially you dig a hole, like a very deep hole, and it's a makeshift toilet. And so a young boy by the name of Michael Komape fell into the pit latrine and lost his life. And you can only imagine that, right? And so for me, you know, I talk about a back room, but then here's a young person who didn't even have a toilet and died in a pit latrine. And those are the stories that drive me. Those are the stories that push me, right? Because it's hard to be young, right? There's so much pressure because your friends, they have an iPhone maybe, or they live in a really big house, or you know, their parents drive this really nice car, and then you can look at something and be like, but why not me? But when you realize that there are those who are in a worse position, that is why you fight, right? And so this story affected me so deeply because he had a future. He was going to be someone, and maybe he was going to be the person who was going to turn his family's life around. He could have been the person to give his parents dignity, but he lost his life because our government failed to do the basics. And so the fight then changes from a personal narrative to seeing the conditions that others are living in and seeing the lack of dignity and seeing the hope of a young person being lost simply because politically our leaders have failed to deliver the basic, right? And so I think that was so important to me to realize, guys, we have to change our society and our community. We simply cannot have a community where a 5-year-old dies because government has failed, right? And so I get into politics because of stories like that, because that child needs someone to fight for them. That teenager needs someone to fight for them, right? That voice is so important in that space because we carry the stories of our families, of where we come from, of, like I'm sure your parents will tell you like their stories of how they grew up, and some they will say, like it wasn't easy, to get to where we are as a family, and you'll listen to those stories and be like, yeah, dad, yeah, mom, I hear you. But they share those stories because for them to get to where they are, they faced a lot of challenges. And so that is the reason we have to do what we need to do. And I think, um, not to be too long, but it's something that truly makes me emotional because we have to continue to fight for a better world, for a better community. And it doesn't have to be a change that is so big, like that is massive. One person, one impact is all it takes to change someone's life. And that for me is big enough. So hopefully in this fight, we don't have a Michael Komape who will fall into a pit latrine toilet and die, because there will be a voice that will understand the pain of that and understand that that child was the hope for that family. So that's what I can say. That's why I fight every day. That's why I wake up every day, because I believe that we have to change something. We have to. There's no choice, right?
Absolutely. There's always a story that, the symbolization of things that happen in front of you that you witness in your life, they take you through a transformation. And
Hmm.
that's what you shared with us. That's the kind of experience that, so just to make it more realistic for these teenagers, just, some weeks back, we all saw the suspension of the NHFC CEO following your complaints over millions in alleged fraud. Now, to the parents and students who might listen to all of this, corruption is majorly abstract. They're not able to understand the transaction of it if they don't put in that much of effort. Can you describe in simple human terms the direct connection between a CEO misusing millions of credit cards and a desperate family who might not be able to afford a proper
Hmm.
roof over their heads? How does that really translate in simple human terms?
So I always say that to break it down quite easily, it starts with us as citizens, right? We all pay tax. When you go and you buy something at the shop in South Africa, we have something called VAT, which is value added tax. So when you buy something, it's taxed. When you put petrol in your car, there's a certain tax. When you get a salary, there's a tax. So essentially, the money that government has is your money, if you think about it quite simply. So government, through tax, is able to fund government programs. So the money that builds the roads, the money that puts a light on the street, the money that makes sure there's water in your tap and keeps it running is your money. So government uses your money to deliver services, right? So in the situation of the NHFC, which is I'm in the housing portfolio committee, the money that is stolen from government is essentially money that's stolen from the people. And remember, government, there's no government without your money. So when you go and buy a sweet at the shop, when you go with your parents to buy a PlayStation, when you get to a garage, petrol station, and your parents put petrol in the car, that money, a certain percentage of that money goes to government to fund services. So when people steal that money, they're essentially stealing from the taxpayer, and the people are the taxpayer. So in simple terms, that's what I can explain it as. And in this particular situation, we had a CEO who was using a credit card to essentially for their own personal use and not for the people. They had a responsibility to deliver housing to South Africans, and they failed to do that. Instead, they chose to enrich themselves. So this is a fight that I've been fighting for over a year, and luckily, last week she was suspended because of this fight that we've been pushing. And we hope that the millions of South Africans who don't have housing because of officials who decide to steal money from the public will have an opportunity to get housing and shelter.
Um, Thank you so much for this response. It makes, to be very frank, the money that people give in taxes goes to governments, and governments use that to help people. And when that money is not used in the right way, that's kind of corruption happening in some or the other way. So I typically dumbed it down even more. But the definition of corruption, or rather, who will be, defined as a corrupt individual or who would not be defined as a corrupt individual, changes with the government or the parties in power. This is what becomes superbly confusing for the public at large. They're not able to understand that, okay, is this the bad guy? Is that the bad guy? They're not able to define the bad guy because of political interests. And, that's the way politics is. We understand that. But what would you tell a teenager that how do they understand the good and the bad guy in the whole story? Because they would need to understand that. Only then they can make a informed decision. So, as a politician who understand that the world is not black and white, it's all gray, how do you help them identify that, okay, this is something that we must not be doing, and this is something, or these are the kind of people that we must be supporting? How to take that decision?
Well, I mean, there's different indicators, right? But I'll try to break it down as simple as I can. Anyone who misuses money that's meant for the people is wrong and essentially is corrupt, right? So anyone who takes money that is, earmarked for building a house or extending a water pipe or building a road and takes that money for themselves and effectively steals it from the taxpayer is someone who shouldn't be in office, shouldn't be a public representative, shouldn't be an official in government or a public servant in government, because they are misusing funds to benefit themselves, funds that are meant for the people. And so I think that's one way to look at it. But also, I think as you grow up, you'll realize that there's obviously different indicators. There's auditing where the books get audited, and all officials must account for the money that they've spent, and they must account for every amount of money and what they spent, right? So there will be different indicators, but I would say that anybody can be corrupt, right? And so it is through their own actions that you see if someone is doing it for the right reason or the wrong reason, right? It's always about your why. Why are you doing it, right? So for me, I'm never surprised by political parties because you can say this party is corrupt, that party is corrupt. At the end of the day, there are people in organizations, and people are the ones that commit these crimes. And so I would just say that when you know your why, you can never, never be confused about what you're doing. But effectively, Stealing money for your own benefit is corruption. That's what I would say in a simple way.
So, moving on from this, there's always a global responsibility of leadership that comes on the shoulders of all the members of parliament of different countries who go on global forums to address their own country or represent their own country or nation.
Mm,
As a young leader and as a vice president of the African Liberal Youth, you operate on a global stage where you
mm.
have to attend UN meetings and be with international leaders. Do you feel that there's a pressure on you to be better than your international peers and rather just seem better than your international peers just to prove that young African leadership is world class? Do you feel that that pressure is there on you, or is it something that you negate? What do you do with it?
I absolutely don't feel any pressure to be better than my peers. The reason why I think, if you look at life in a way where you don't see people as a competitor, but you see people as people you can learn from, right? Because we all want to be better at something or get better at doing something, right? So do you know how much energy it takes to not like someone because you think they're better than you? So much energy, right? And so my perspective is I look at people that I admire and I want to learn from them so that I can be better, right? And one of my favorite quotes that always humbles me and always corrects my heart the moment where I feel like, oh, I'm becoming a little bit jealous or I'm becoming whatever, whatever, is a simple one. It says, work hard and your time will come. So what that effectively means is that maybe you see someone, they always getting 80% in their tests, and you're like, but why am I not getting 80%? Like I'm working so hard, and they're just getting 80%, right? Or, it can be anything, right? But this quote basically says, put your head down, work hard. Today might not be your day, but you know what? Tomorrow could be your day. So don't look to the side, don't look left, don't look right, don't see what your friend is doing and this friend is doing, and they're doing better than you and this and that. Focus on yourself and understand that timing will meet you at the right time, at the right place. So that is my philosophy in life. Work hard and your time will come. And that always sets my heart correct. It always brings me back to the importance of self-improvement and never allowing myself to look at someone because, oh, they have a better thing than this, or they have the latest clothes or the latest sneakers. Why don't I have that? Or they're doing better than me at school, or, because if you understand that everything has its timing, you will have your timing, right? So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Understand if you're focusing and working hard, you know what? You'll get that 80% one day. So that's my philosophy, and it's something that has always worked for me. And I don't look at people as competition. I look at people as something I can learn from, and always just grow my skill, right? Because this world is about improving your skill and getting better at something. So you don't get better at something by not liking someone who does it better. You get better by saying, actually, dude, like, how did you do that? Can you teach me? Can you share a lesson? That's how you get better, right? And that's just how I see things.
One of the reasons that I asked that question was that we all understand across the globe that politics, after the advent of social media now, politics is a game of perception. Optics play a very major role in how you might have the best intentions in the world. You might be doing the things in the right way, but how you are perceived can easily be changed and taken in a completely different direction by social media and even by the mainstream media. So when that perception becomes more important than reality, what do you do? That's the reason that I asked this question, that it's very important for your constituents to see you as that amazing leader who they have elected. So I understand the intention has to be there, but other than the intention, what all do you take care of?
So that's a very interesting question, right? And I think it's, as you're saying, there is perception and there's reality. And, I think when I started my politics journey, I was so concerned about being speaking well, projecting my voice, wearing a suit, having it all together, right? It was so important to me because I felt like that's what I needed to project in the space, in the political space. But as I've matured in my own politics, I just realized like people just want to like know that we're all the same because we are, right? Like politicians aren't special. There's nothing special about a politician. And I think the moment we see politicians as special is the moment that we allow um, you know, the feeling that there are people in society that are better than others. And so I think the moment we start to break down the idea that politicians are special and we start realizing that politicians are just you and me, like there's no difference. Like we walk the street, we all go to the grocery store, we all put petrol in our car, we all, have families, mothers, fathers, kids. We are just like, once you break that down, then you realize all politicians are actually there to serve you, to serve the people. And I think we've gotten to a place in our politics where, politicians are like some form of celebrity, and they are not. Like they are not celebrities. Like they must be there to serve the people. They are there because you voted for them. They are there to to serve. And I think part of dealing with politics is to break down this thing that these guys are special and like they're like, like they've got drivers and they've got, like you can't touch them. No, 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 no. That's not how politicians, and we should never relate to politicians like that. They are servants, right? And the moment you put up your hand to say, please vote for me, I'm standing to be a member of parliament or I'm standing to be a councillor, you need to understand that you are saying to people, I want to serve you. So now, if I say I want to serve you, and then tomorrow I'm in a suit and like, you can't touch me, can't touch this. No, 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 no. That's not how it's supposed to be. And I think that's part of breaking down the perception. And I think for me, um, I always try to just keep it real in as much as I can. Like as a young person in parliament, like, I am who I am. And you know, I'm not trying to be part of the system. I just want to be myself and I just want to continue speaking on the issues that I feel deeply about and never allowing the space to change me, right? And I think that's just the important thing. To be genuine and real always.
Following up on the conversation we're having, that perception reality, you were in the middle of a social media controversy very
Yeah.
early in your career, and that got superbly blown up. And you are not on the right side of it, you are on the wrong side of it. So and this is something that a lot of teenagers face, the simple idea that I hate this and I want to post this, I love this, I want to post this, the instant posting urge in teenagers, and you have been a victim of it.
Hmm.
So after that, what's that one rule that you follow so that not such a blunder happens? And for all the teenagers here, you must listen to this and go back and read about Mr. Luyolo. And there's a controversy that happened just for the sake of learning and understanding. And what are the cautious or caution steps that he now takes when he uses social media?
Yeah, look, yeah, that's true. So I was in a controversy, young people. Uh, and you know, one thing I can say about it, I mean, I'm not going to break it down fully because it's quite a long story. But what I'll say is this, is that social media is a very powerful tool. And social media can also be a very dangerous tool. And I think when you're young, you can post something, because you think it's funny or you think it's cool, and then you grow up, and then one day you like old, and then the next time, like someone will go back and be like, "Oh, what did you post when you were 15? Or what did you post when you were 14?" And that can like lead to so many things. But what I can just say about that is, remember, what is online is forever. So if you post something, remember it will always be there. All right. So always think carefully about what you post. Um, Even if you think it's funny or you think it's cool, just always remember it will always be online. So I think that's just the one rule that I would say. Um, we live in a digital age, and we have so many social mediums, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, or X right now. I think it's called X, Instagram. There's so many different things, right? And so I would say, remember, verify information. Remember, everything stays online forever. And yeah, just use the tool in a positive way. And yeah, and you should be fine. That's what I'll say. But if you want to hear about my controversy, read about it. And if the team invites me back, I will tell you that story. It's a very interesting one.
Thank you so much for sharing this learning with all the teens. When you get into public office, even a tweet that you might have put 10 years back, in the past could haunt you at any point of time, and it could typically ruin careers. It could ruin lives of the people involved. So that's the gravity that a simple, instantaneous post on an Instagram or a Twitter could do for you. So remember, it's serious stuff that you're putting there. It'll remain there. So moving on to the next question, the currently when you look at geopolitics in the world, since Trump has come into power, the world leaders are thinking in very different ways. For general people, the United Nations is now losing power. It's no more a group of United Nations. It's rather a group of diverse nations who don't want to be united anymore. From globalization, the world now is moving towards localization. They're looking at their own personal needs. They are not concerned about what's going on around the world. What are your thoughts on it? That is the future look like this? That countries will only focus on their priorities because the collective power, is not there anywhere in the world as of now. The power centers have disintegrated. The world is looking for a new rule. What's your opinion on all of this?
Look, I believe in a globalized world, right? So let's just use a quick example. I mean, without globalization, Luyolo Mphithi from South Africa would not be sitting on this Zoom talking to young people from literally across the world, right? It wouldn't happen. But that's the power of globalization, right? Because we can sit on this Zoom and you can listen to someone in South Africa. You know what I mean? So that's the great thing about it. And I think we need to be focusing on a globalized world. And I don't think we need to retreat into our own countries and focus on our own countries. There's so many problems in the world. And so many countries, we've seen Ukraine and Russia, we've seen there's so many wars happening in the world. And so to retreat and focus on our own issues, it's just not going to work. So I'm against the retreat. I support globalization. I support nations standing together, trying to build collaboration together, trying to work together to improve the world. And that's just my personal view. And today is a very easy example of how globalization can empower and help each other, and we can hear each other's stories, and I can hear how is school in India, right? Like what do you guys learn? And I can listen to young people there and like compare those experiences to South African experiences and be like, wow, that's so cool that you guys do that, That's so cool that, you know what I mean? Like that is like the importance of this, right? And to speak and to grow each other and to build each other and to learn from each other. So I think that's so amazing. And why would anybody want to have less of that? So I don't know. Like people just need to get with the program.
So let's now take it a level ahead. The world now, closely follows, even teenagers, a lot of teens follow geopolitics, the relationships between different countries. South Africa just saw G20 happening. You
Mhm.
saw a lot of heat being exchanged, and the conclusion ceremony or the handing over saw, some not so amazing action.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on it with, now Trump saying that, we don't want South Africa there to be in the G20 in 2026? How do you look at it when South Africa has an opinion on a particular incident? US has a completely different opinion on the same incident, and people don't believe each other. There's no common ground, and everyone says there's no transparency. How do you look at it?
Well, firstly, I'll just say this. I think it's very unfortunate what is happening um, between South Africa and the US. And I am a very patriotic South African. And I think all of us will be patriotic to our own countries, right? Because we're born in these countries. And so, what I would just say is South Africa is a country that is diverse, that is beautiful. We have every nation you can imagine. We've got white South Africans, black South Africans, Indian South Africans, Muslim South Africans, colored South Africans. Um, we literally have everybody you can imagine in our country. That's why we call the Rainbow Nation, because we have so many different cultures and religions and different people. And so it's quite sad to see um, that vision and what we are as a country being broken down by someone who doesn't understand us and doesn't understand the people of South Africa, because we are a loving nation where we embrace each other, right? And we have 12 languages, so it's unfortunate to see that. And I think if you speak to anybody really that has been to South Africa or that lives in South Africa, they will tell you what South Africa is and what it's about. And I think it's just unfortunate that um, what we have tried to build in 30 years is being broken down by someone who does not understand where we are coming from as a nation. We had apartheid literally 30 years ago, where there was racial discrimination, right? And just 30 years ago, we've had an opportunity to build a country where all can live in it. That's our constitution. It says it's a country where all can live in it, right? And so I think it's just unfortunate. But what I can say is I'm very proud of South Africa, how it handled the G20 that was happening here. And, I couldn't have been prouder. And even to see the Prime Minister coming to our country, he received so much love. And I think he had a really great time. If you saw some of the videos that he posted, and embraced by our country and embraced by the population, right? And South Africa has a huge Indian population, by the way. And so just the love that he received is just symbolic of the type of country we are and how we embrace and love. And so that's all I can say about it, really. I don't think I can add more, but I would just say that we are a very loving country, and yeah.
So thank you so much for that response. South Africa as a nation, as part of foreign policy, has always said that, we are a neutral nation. We are not with any sides in the world. We try to stay neutral. But with the current, things happening in the world, when neutrality has become rather impossible to hold for any nation, do you think it will be an option in the future, or it will have to be, bygone with?
Look, foreign policy is very complex, right? Because there are interests. So there are interests of the nation, what is best for the country, and then there is what is right. So, foreign policy will always be complex. And I think there are a lot of different moving parts always at a time, right? And I think um, if you know your values and your principles, then you'll always be led by them. And South Africa has always been a country that has been led by the values of a human rights constitution, and our foreign policy has always been led by human rights and the protection of human rights in any country. And I think, you know, in this complex world that we're living in and what we've already been seeing in our country, all we can do is to stand on our principles and values. And, that's what I would say. It's a very complex space. There are many moving actors, there are many different groups, and but we will stand with our principles and our values, and I think that's just what it is. Yeah.
You're very right. Ambiguity is the friend of foreign policy. It's the best way to respond to foreign policy because you're very right. There are so many moving factors that nobody can understand and align them at point of time. It's very difficult. So there are a lot of questions that teenagers have asked. If I can, I try to take some of them. I think one question has. Okay, so I think you've already answered it, but I just to add more to it. This question is coming from Bidhatri Ghimri, who's a GD Goenka school student. That is there any way we can find out whether a politician is using the money for personal gain? Because the taxpayers do not know the sum of their money, and maybe the people holding the database can be corrupted too. So, what she's really trying to ask that what are the sources that we can come to know whether an individual is using funds for his personal gains?
Well, I mean, one example, and thank you for the question. One example that I can say is so in South Africa, we have something called lifestyle audits. So essentially, what that means is um, your life gets audited, right? So if you're earning a certain particular salary and then you're driving a Lamborghini or you're driving a Porsche, and the salary that you're earning just doesn't allow you to buy or to get a Porsche, then that's one way of picking up that someone is making money in a wrong way. So lifestyle audits will include like what type of house do you live in? What type of car do you have? How much money do you have in your bank? And those are the ways that in South Africa we track or see how someone is benefiting unfairly based on the type of life they are living. Because we all, politicians, South Africa, members of parliament, our salaries are public. Everybody knows how much we make. And we definitely can't afford to buy a Porsche. And so if there's any politician driving a Porsche, then that is a clear way to see that there's been misappropriation of funds. So that's just one example I can give.
There's one very interesting question that has come from Suryavir Singh that can you differentiate between corruption and misconduct of the government?
Corruption and misconduct. Okay. Well, I mean, misconduct can really relate to anything, right? Your politicians have a standard to uphold. There is a constitution. There is in our parliament, for example, we have our parliamentary rules. So there is a standard to uphold, and politicians shouldn't be found lacking in that particular standard. So misconduct can really be anything, right? It can be um, any behavior that is untoward or that is not in line with the rules and guidelines of Parliament. It can be acting in a way that is not fit and proper of a politician or of a member of Parliament. So it can really just be any type of conduct that is not within the rules and guidelines, right? Whereas corruption similarly could, I'm not sure if I could actually say they are the same thing, because I feel like with corruption, it is taking illegally from the state and using what you've taken for your own personal benefit. For and that is just against the people that you are supposed to help. And so corruption is a violation of the people that you're supposed to be helping. And misconduct for me could be it can be personal, can be a violation, of how you act. And so I do think they are different. Um, yeah, that's what I can say. I don't want to drag it up, but yeah, that's what I would say.
So there's another interesting question that comes from Manaswini Bansal, who's a student again of GD Goenka from Siliguri in India. Um, the biggest problem that a teenager faces is that they want to influence politics. But the problem is, whenever they try to influence politics, they'll be forced to, align with a political organization. How can they not align with an organization and still influence politics?
Yeah, great question. Look, one thing I can say is politics, firstly, is not the only way to change society or to change your community. So I think that that's the first thing that that we all need to know. There's so many avenues that you can influence and change your community. There's civil society, and there's so many amazing NGOs in South Africa, for example, that are doing such amazing work. On the ground without having to be part of politics, right? So politics is not the only vehicle to change the country or to change a community. Um, yes, politics, it depends on the type of system that you have, right? In South Africa, we have a very party-based system. So, um, you know, generally, like people join parties to get into politics. But people are also independents. So, if you're an independent, it's much harder. I'll be honest about that. But you do have an avenue if you really want to get into politics and not be aligned to any party to go at it independently and, build your brand, build your profile, drive an issue that people only know you for that issue, right? Whenever someone thinks of um, crime or thinks of the one person who was fighting for a road and wanting a road to be in this community, like they think of you and you build your name on that and then you run and people will remember you. Oh, this is the young lady or the young man that stood on that road and made sure that they're not going to leave until the government came and built the road, and you build your profile like that, right? Or you join a political party, right? Which is not always easy because, a political party has its own set of rules and guidelines, and maybe there's some things that you don't agree with, and because you're in that party, you'll have to just, suck it up. So, I think it depends on what you want to achieve and what you are able to handle. In any political party, there are compromises, right, that you would have to make. Maybe you don't agree with certain policies. Maybe, it's compromise. So I think one would have to just see what works best for them. But again, politics is not the only vehicle to make change in your community.
You're also the party whip for your party. So you do a lot of that stuff where you ask people to do stuff in a certain way. So what happens when you have to make people comply with the ideology even when they personally don't want to comply with it? What is it that you do? Because you're supposed to do that as a party whip.
Yeah, look, we obviously have parliamentary rules. So, I, as a whip, ensure that the parliamentary rules are followed and that we have discipline and that we are aligned in terms of the caucus decision. So if the party or the caucus decides to vote yes on a particular item, it's to ensure that all members vote yes. Because once a decision is taken by the caucus, then we must follow that decision. And that's just, some of the things I do. I enforce the rules that are already there, which is our parliamentary rules. So it's not my own rules. It's the rules that are within the caucus. And, essentially a whip, uh, it sounds so rough, but it's literally a whip. You whip people into line. That's what a whip is. Obviously not really hitting them, right? But like you get what I'm trying to say. Um, so so that's what we do. Ensure that we vote accordingly to our, the caucus decisions, making sure that we also provide support to new members of parliament. Because it can be a lonely journey. Parliament is lonely, all right? Because you come in there, you're away from your family, you're there 4 days a week, you're not at home with your family. So you need to give members of parliament support. Are you coping? What support can I give you? So yeah, it's a range of things to be a whip, and obviously to ensure that you make it comfortable for the MP or the member of parliament, because it's 5 years, right? And they need to adapt to flying up and down twice a week, and make sure that they have the adequate support to drive their issues and to ensure that they are fighting for their communities and they have the best tools within their disposal to do that.
So just a small question for your comments, just adding to this. The idea of a party whip, does it not move the power center or the decision making power from the parliament to the party's office, who decides on how things will actually get made? I know this is something, it's a difficult part to answer, but don't you think personally that doesn't this system really take the power out of the parliament and take it to the party office?
No, absolutely not. I think, you know, parties in parliament, um, they have to obviously agree and support, what the decision of the party is. And Parliament's role is to ensure that they provide the platform in which these discussions can happen, the debates can happen, that all parties can speak on those debates, and that when the vote comes, Parliament can conduct the vote in a credible, transparent way that reflects the view of the House. And so I don't think it takes power away from it at all. I think Parliament is there to ensure that it facilitates democracy. And democracy is vested within the political parties who are elected by the people. So I don't think it does that. No.
Super. So on this call itself, we have some teenagers who did, I think, 2 weeks or 3 weeks back, they did a podcast with Mr. Jai Naidu, the cabinet minister from Nelson Mandela Parliament. So
Hmm.
Sanchit, I think, is there on the call with us. Sanchit did the postcard. So Sanchit has a question for you. Sanchit, please unmute yourself. You can share your experience with Mr. Naidu as well and ask your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for inviting me. So, sir, my question for Mr. Luyolo would be, when we did a podcast with Mr. Jay Naidu, he uh, mentioned how youth is very important for modern day politics right now. And he highlighted how youth often feel disconnected from the decision making in real politics. From your view, what structural changes are needed to ensure young people have a real seat at the table, not just symbolically, but with actual influence? Thank you.
Sorry, can you just repeat the last part? I lost the last two sentences.
So, from your view, what structural changes are needed to ensure young people have a real seat at the table, not just symbolically, but actually?
Oh, okay. That is a very, very interesting question. I think first of all, one of the things that we need to do is we have young people that are very apathetic, right? Because they don't believe in the institution of democracy anymore, because they don't feel like democracy is working for them. They don't feel like democracy is giving them opportunities, is giving them a sense of fairness, a sense of um, feeling the change, right? Because young people are just not feeling that. And I think across the world, we're seeing young people who are apathetic. And I think one of the ways that we challenge that idea is to make young people understand that politics affects you whether you like it or not, right? How does it do that? When you wake up in the morning, and you switch on your light, that's politics, because the electricity comes from government. When you open your tap to pour a glass of water, that's politics. When you flush your toilet, that's politics. When you walk into your street and there's a street light on, that's politics. When you drive your car on the road, that's politics. Because if that road is not done and there's potholes, it means government has not done. So our lives are literally linked to politics in a crazy way. Because when politics fails, do you know how you're going to know? When you switch on the light, there's no electricity. When you open your tap, there's no water. When you walk into the street, there's no street lights. When you drive your car, there's potholes. You know, that's how deeply entrenched politics is, right? And that's just at a basic level. We're not even talking about the economy here. We're not even talking about, something serious. We're just talking about the basic day-to-day livelihoods of all of us. So I think young people need to understand that not taking up that space or not voting or not getting involved in politics means that you will deal with the decisions that others have made for you. So when you wake up one day and there's no electricity and you did not vote, other people decided that they wanted this person who now can't provide electricity, who can't provide water, who can't provide a proper road, who can't ensure that you have street lights on the street. So those are the decisions that we end up making by not participating. So if we want to have the basics, right? If we want to have an economy that has that creates jobs, if we want to have a country where every child goes to school and gets a proper education, if we want a world or community where you go to the hospital and you get the best service or care for whatever illness or injury you have, then we need to step up. It's that simple. And I think that is the message, and that's how it starts, because we can change and like put in quotas and whatever. That's not going to help us, right? What's going to help us is to understand what's at stake. Because if we continue to allow the people who've been in power to continue to be in power, then we will continue to suffer. It's that simple. So step up, own up, and take command of your country, right? It's that simple. I think that's the only message I can say.
Thank you so much for the answers and for so much of time. We're nearly at the conclusion of this podcast. But before we end, now it's time for a rapid fire. There are some interesting questions. We'll try to ask them as quickly as possible. And we want your first response to come out. Don't take a lot of time to respond. We want your instinct to reply rather than your thought or your intellect. So let's see what we hear from you next. The rapid fire starts now. If you could DM every teenager in the world one line of advice, what would it be?
Work hard and your time will come.
What's a red flag you instantly spot in young leaders?
Arrogance.
What scares politicians the most? Youth, social media, or transparency?
Transparency.
What's the one thing young leaders do better than most old politicians today?
We know what future we want.
If you could expose one political secret that teens deserve to know, what would it be?
Wow. um, I think it's going to be harsh, but I feel like most politicians are dumb. I'll just be honest. Like, honestly, like, that's what I feel.
What's one Gen Z question you secretly wish people asked you more often?
What music are you listening to?
Great. So, what music are you listening to?
Oh, I'm listening to Drake, Kendrick Lamar, Travis Scott. What am I listening to recently? Meek Mill. Those are my favorite artists, yeah.
Amazing. So, what's the most unexpectedly cool thing about being an MP?
Oh, meeting people. Yeah, meeting people.
Which political rumor about you made you laugh the hardest?
Ooh. Oh my goodness. There's been so many. What can I, which one made me laugh? Oh, that I'm secretly married. And I'm not married, by the way.
If Parliament had a reality show confession room, what would be your first confession?
They all crazy.
If Parliament has a gossip column, what would be today's headline?
Um, Whoa, that is a tough one. What would be today's headline? Everybody's tired and ready for December.
And the final question in this, if you could leak one harmless secret about the political world, just for fun, what would that be?
The people that you think are enemies are actually friends.
Thank you so much for this last statement. And I think this is something that, teens must understand. Parliaments have a perception, but the reality is very, very different. So understand politics more. Thank you so much, Mr. Luyolo, for being a part of this podcast. Before we end, what are your closing thoughts? Did you enjoy the session? Did you enjoy everything at the Teen Parliament? What are your thoughts before we end?
I'll just say thank you so much for the conversation, and I'm so glad to see the young people, and I wish you guys all the best, and be the change makers in your school, in your community, in your home. The change starts with you, and it starts now. So start building and start focusing and working hard, because I was there. I was you. So keep at it. And thank you so much to the team, and thank you for inviting me again. It's such a great honor to be in this forum and to have these conversations. It's truly appreciated. And I wish everybody the best.
Thank you so much, Mr. Luyolo.